You've seen it before. Someone walks into the room and acts like they're already above you, not louder, not smarter, just certain that they matter more, certain that you need to impress them, and without realizing it, most people accept that invisible pressure. They start adjusting their tone, choosing their words carefully, trying to prove something that was never questioned until that moment. That's where they lose. Not in the conversation, but in the frame. Because the second you feel the need to prove your worth to someone, you've already placed them above you in your own mind. And that's the real game. It's not about intelligence, status, or success. It's about who controls the psychological frame. People who act superior understand one thing very well. If they can make you react, they control you. A small smirk, a dismissive comment, a subtle interruption. These are not random behaviors. They are signals, tests. They are watching to see if you'll try to defend yourself, explain yourself, or seek their approval. And most people do exactly that. They talk more than necessary. They over-explain simple things. They try to appear confident instead of being composed, and every extra word, every emotional reaction feeds the illusion that the other person is above them. But here's what almost nobody notices. The people who act superior are often the most dependent on attention, dependent on reaction, dependent on others playing along with their silent script. Strip away your reaction and their entire structure begins to crack. That's why the most dangerous move is not aggression, it's not confrontation, it's control. The ability to stay still when someone expects movement. The ability to remain calm when someone tries to provoke you. The ability to say less when others are trying too hard. Because in that stillness, something shifts. The dynamic changes. The person who was trying to dominate now has nothing to push against. No resistance, no emotion, no confirmation. And suddenly, they're exposed. This is where you stop being predictable. This is where you stop being easy to read. This is where you stop playing the role they expected you to play. And once that happens, you don't just avoid being controlled. You become the one controlling the entire interaction without saying a word. That's the shift most people never reach. But once you see it, you can't unsee it. Before we move forward, I want you to drop this affirmation in the comments. I never prove myself. Number 1. Ego as a psychological weakness. Ego doesn't come from strength. It comes from instability that learned how to wear confidence like a mask. The people who walk around acting superior are not grounded in certainty. They are addicted to comparison. They measure themselves constantly, scanning every room for someone to stand above. And when they find you, they don't attack directly. They apply pressure in subtle ways, a dismissive tone, a slight smirk, a calculated interruption. It's not random behavior, it's positioning. They are trying to place themselves higher in the invisible hierarchy that exists in every interaction. But here's the flaw in their strategy. Ego cannot survive on its own. It needs fuel. It needs acknowledgement. It needs you to feel something. The moment you react, whether through irritation, defensiveness, or even overconfidence, you give them exactly what they are looking for. You confirm that their presence has influence over you. And influence, even in small amounts, becomes leverage. This is why ego-driven individuals are constantly provoking. Not because they are powerful, but because they are dependent. They rely on your emotional response to maintain their illusion. Without it, they have nothing to stand on. Niccolò Machiavelli once pointed toward this dynamic in his own way. Men are driven more by appearances than by reality. And ego is the perfect example of that. It creates an appearance of dominance while hiding a need for validation underneath. When you understand this, you stop seeing arrogance as strength. You start seeing it as exposure. Every condescending remark reveals insecurity. Every attempt to belittle someone else exposes a need to feel elevated. Every forced display of confidence shows a fear of being ignored. These are not signs of control, they are signals of weakness, but only to the person who knows how to read them. Most people miss this completely. They take ego at face value. They assume the person acting superior must actually be superior, so they adjust. They become more agreeable, more reactive, more eager to prove themselves. And in doing so, they feed the very behavior that put them beneath in the first place. But you're not going to play that role anymore. You're going to do something different. You're going to remove the fuel. No reaction, no visible irritation, no attempt to correct their perception. You let their behavior exist without resistance. And when that happens, something uncomfortable begins to unfold for them. The absence of reaction creates silence, and in that silence, their ego has nothing to attach to. No confirmation, no control, no structure. It forces them into uncertainty, and uncertainty is where ego collapses. Because without your response, they can't measure themselves against you. They can't feel superior if you're not participating in the comparison. That's the shift. You stop being a participant and become an observer. You don't engage in their need for dominance. You don't challenge it directly either. You simply don't acknowledge it. And that's what makes it disappear. Quietly, completely. Drop this affirmation in the comments. I don't feed ego. Number 2, the trap of reacting. The moment you feel the urge to respond, pause, because that urge is not random. It was triggered, and once it's triggered, the situation is no longer neutral. It's controlled. People who position themselves above others understand this better than most. They don't need to overpower you physically or intellectually. They just need to move you emotionally. A slight jab, a subtle doubt, a carefully placed comment that questions your competence without saying it directly. And suddenly you feel it, the need to speak, to correct, to defend, to prove. That moment right there is the trap, because the second you step into explanation mode, you abandon control. You start playing on their terms. And their terms are built for one outcome, you chasing validation while they maintain the upper position. It doesn't matter how intelligent your response is. It doesn't matter how logical your explanation sounds. The act of responding itself lowers your position in the dynamic. Why? Because you are now seeking to be understood by someone who never intended to understand you. You are trying to gain approval from someone who benefits from withholding it. And emotional provocation is one of the oldest forms of deception. It convinces you that speaking will restore your position, when in reality, it quietly weakens it. Most people don't see this happening. They think silence means losing. They think not defending themselves looks like weakness. So they rush to explain every misunderstanding, justify every decision, and correct every false assumption. But what they fail to realize is this. People who already decided your position will not change it because of your words. In fact, your effort only reinforces their control. It shows them exactly how to move you again. The more you explain, the more predictable you become. And predictability is easy to manipulate. Now contrast that with someone who doesn't react. Someone who hears the same comment, feels the same pressure, but chooses stillness instead of response. No correction, no defense, no visible shift in emotion, just presence. That kind of response, or lack of it, creates something powerful. It introduces uncertainty, and uncertainty breaks patterns. The person who tried to provoke you now has no feedback to work with. No signal, no confirmation. Their strategy loses direction. And when someone loses direction, they lose control. This is where the real shift happens. You stop trying to be understood. You stop trying to win arguments that were never meant to be fair. You realize that not every statement deserves a response, and not every challenge deserves your attention. You choose restraint, not because you're incapable of responding, but because you understand the cost of unnecessary reaction. You begin to see that silence is not empty. It carries weight. It communicates stability. It shows that you are not easily moved, not easily influenced, not easily drawn into someone else's frame. And that alone changes how people approach you. They become more careful, more measured, because they know you won't give them what they expect. You don't chase approval. You don't explain your value. You don't react to every push. And that makes you difficult to control. Now, I want you to drop this affirmation in the comments. I don't react. Number 3, performer versus strategist dynamic. Most people reveal themselves without realizing it, not through what they say, but through how often they feel the need to say something. Watch closely in any environment. There's always a pattern. One type of person fills space constantly. They speak quickly, jump into conversations, add opinions even when unnecessary. They react in real time, trying to stay visible, trying to stay relevant. That's the performer. Their focus is not control, it's presence. They need to be seen, heard, acknowledged. Every word they release is an attempt to secure a position in the moment. But here's the hidden cost. The more they express, the more they expose. Their thoughts, their emotions, their intentions, all laid out in plain sight. And once everything is visible, it becomes easy to read, easy to anticipate, easy to influence. Now contrast that with a different type of person. Someone who doesn't rush to speak. Someone who listens longer than others are comfortable with. Someone who doesn't react instantly, doesn't interrupt, doesn't compete for attention. That's the strategist. Their focus is not visibility. It's understanding. They let others talk. They let others reveal patterns, habits, weaknesses. While the performer is trying to shape the room, the strategist is studying it. This difference changes everything. Because control doesn't come from being the most active voice. It comes from being the most aware presence. Niccolò Machiavelli once implied this through his observations of power. Wise men say little and observe much. That principle is not about silence for the sake of silence. It's about precision. The strategist speaks when it matters, not when it's comfortable, and because they speak less, every word carries more weight. People listen more closely. They assign more value, not because the words are louder, but because they are rare. The performer, on the other hand, loses this advantage. When someone talks constantly, their words become background noise, predictable, expected. And once someone becomes predictable, they can be guided without even realizing it. Their reactions can be triggered. Their behavior can be shaped. All it takes is the right stimulus at the right time. This is why emotional reactions are so dangerous in social dynamics. The performer reacts instantly, laughs when others laugh, defends when challenged, agrees when pressured. Every reaction is immediate, visible, and easy to track. But the strategist delays. They create space between stimulus and response. And in that space, they gain control. They choose how to respond instead of being pushed into reaction. That delay alone makes them harder to read, harder to predict, harder to manipulate. Over time, this creates a shift in perception. People begin to notice something different. The strategist doesn't chase attention, yet attention moves toward them. They don't compete for dominance, yet their presence feels stronger. Because they are not performing, they are positioning. They understand that every unnecessary word is a leak of information. Every uncontrolled reaction is a loss of leverage. So they conserve both. They observe patterns others miss. They detect tension others ignore. And when they finally act, it's not impulsive. It's calculated. That's the real difference. One is trying to be seen. The other is quietly taking control of the entire dynamic. Drop this affirmation in the comments. I observe more. Number 4. Strategic silence and emotional detachment. Most people think power comes from pushing back, from answering every challenge, from proving they cannot be disrespected. But that mindset keeps them trapped in a constant cycle of reaction. They believe they are standing strong, when in reality, they are being moved again and again by external pressure. Every time someone provokes them and they respond, they give away something valuable, control over their own state. And once your state is controlled, your decisions follow. That's how subtle dominance works, not by force, but by influence. This is why strategic silence is not passive. It is deliberate. It is chosen. It is a refusal to engage on terms that are designed to pull you down. When someone tries to challenge you emotionally, they expect resistance. They expect a shift in your tone, your posture, your expression. They are waiting for signs that they have affected you. But when none of that appears, the entire interaction changes direction. There is no friction, no escalation, no confirmation, just stillness. And that stillness creates pressure on them instead. Because now they are the only one moving. They are the only one exposing themselves. And the more they try, the more obvious their intent becomes. Niccolò Machiavelli captured this kind of control in a different form when he suggested that true strength lies in restraint rather than display. Not everything requires an answer, not every moment deserves engagement, and not every person is worth your energy. Emotional detachment is what makes this possible. It's not about suppressing feelings or pretending nothing affects you. It's about refusing to let those feelings dictate your behavior in real time. You feel the moment, but you don't act on it impulsively. You separate sensation from action. That separation is where control lives. Most people never develop this. They move as they feel. If something irritates them, they show it immediately. If something challenges them, they respond instantly. Their internal state becomes visible without effort, and that visibility makes them easy to handle. But when you detach, you remove that visibility. You become harder to read, harder to influence, harder to destabilize. People begin to notice something unusual. Their usual tactics don't work on you. The same comments that trigger others don't move you. The same pressure that forces reactions from others has no effect. And that creates confusion, because when someone cannot predict your behavior, they lose their ability to guide it. Strategic silence combined with emotional detachment creates a different kind of presence. You are there, but not easily accessible. Engaged, but not reactive. Aware, but not affected. This doesn't make you distant, it makes you controlled. You choose when to speak. You choose when to respond. You choose when to act. Nothing is pulled out of you without your decision. Over time, this builds something powerful. People begin to hesitate before approaching you a certain way. They become more careful with their tone, their words, their behavior. Not because you demanded respect, but because your control made disrespect ineffective. That's the shift. You don't fight ego with ego. You don't match energy with energy. You remove yourself from the pattern entirely. And in doing so, you take control without ever needing to show it. I want you to drop this affirmation in the comments. I stay unshaken. Number 5. Information gathering and leverage. While most people are busy reacting, talking, and trying to hold their position, something else is happening quietly in the background. Patterns are forming, signals are being revealed, weak points are showing themselves, but only to the person who is paying attention. This is where real advantage is built, not through force, not through confrontation, but through observation. When someone believes they are above you, they become careless. They assume you are not a threat, which lowers their guard. And when the guard drops, the truth starts leaking out. Their tone changes depending on who they speak to. Their confidence rises and falls based on validation. Their behavior shifts when they feel ignored. These are not random inconsistencies, they are indicators. Every small reaction, every shift in expression, every repeated habit tells you something about how they operate. And once you understand how someone operates, you understand how they can be influenced. Niccolò Machiavelli pointed toward this kind of awareness when he emphasized the importance of studying human nature rather than reacting to it. Because people rarely hide who they are for long. They reveal themselves through repetition. Most individuals miss this entirely because they are too focused on being understood instead of understanding others. They are caught in their own reactions, their own thoughts, their own need to respond. But when you step out of that cycle, you gain a different perspective. You begin to notice timing. You see when someone speaks with certainty and when they hesitate. You recognize what triggers their confidence and what disrupts it. You detect what they avoid and what they overcompensate for. These are not surface-level observations, they are leverage points, because every insecurity creates a predictable reaction. Every need creates a pattern, and every pattern can be used. The person who needs recognition will always move toward attention. The person who fears being ignored will overextend to stay visible. The person who depends on appearing superior will react when that image is questioned. Once you see these patterns clearly, you don't need to confront them directly. You simply position yourself in a way that exposes them. You allow situations to unfold where their habits reveal them even more. You don't interrupt, you don't challenge, you let them continue, and the more they continue, the more they expose. This is where patience becomes power, because leverage is not created instantly, it is built over time. Every interaction adds data, every moment adds clarity, and while they believe they are in control of the situation, they are actually giving you everything you need. Information becomes your advantage, not because you use it aggressively, but because you hold it quietly. You understand what moves them, what unsettles them, what they rely on, and that understanding changes how you respond. You no longer react randomly, you act with intention. You choose moments carefully. You decide when to engage and when to remain still. Because now you're not guessing, you're operating with insight. And insight is what separates control from reaction. Over time, this creates a silent shift in power. The person who once seemed dominant begins to feel uncertain, not because you challenge them, but because they can no longer predict you while you can read them clearly. That imbalance is where control forms. You don't need to announce it. You don't need to display it. You simply hold it, quietly, precisely, and that's what makes it dangerous. Number 6. Being underestimated as an advantage. Most people fear being underestimated. They feel the need to correct it immediately. The moment someone doubts them, overlooks them, or assumes they're less capable, they rush to change that perception. They speak more, show more, reveal more. They try to prove their intelligence, their skill, their value, but in doing that, they give away one of the most powerful positions you can hold, being unseen. Because when someone underestimates you, they relax. They stop analyzing you. They stop preparing for you. They stop considering you a factor in their decisions. And that creates space. Space to observe. Space to move without resistance. Space to build without interference. This is not a disadvantage. It is a strategic position. Niccolò Machiavelli understood this principle when he emphasized that appearing less threatening can be more effective than appearing strong, because visible strength invites opposition. But quiet presence goes unnoticed until it's too late to respond. When you are underestimated, people reveal more around you. They speak freely. They act naturally. They drop the guarded behavior they would normally maintain around someone they consider equal or superior. And in that relaxed state, they expose patterns, intentions, and weaknesses without realizing it. Most people never get access to this level of visibility because they are too focused on being recognized. They want acknowledgement. They want respect. They want to be seen as capable immediately. But recognition comes with attention, and attention brings scrutiny. The more visible you become, the more others evaluate you, challenge you, and adjust their behavior around you. That reduces your ability to move freely. But when you allow yourself to be underestimated, you remove that pressure. You operate without being watched closely. You gather information without being questioned. You position yourself without being resisted. This is where patience becomes essential, because the urge to prove yourself doesn't disappear. It has to be controlled. There will be moments where you feel the need to show what you know, to correct someone's false assumption, to demonstrate your capability. But acting on that urge too early destroys the advantage. Timing matters. The reveal matters. If you show everything at the beginning, you leave nothing for later. But if you hold back, if you stay composed and let others maintain their assumptions, you create a delayed impact. And delayed impact is far more powerful than immediate validation. Because when the moment finally comes, when you choose to act, speak, or demonstrate, there is contrast. The same people who dismissed you are now forced to reassess you, and that shift is stronger than anything you could have forced through explanation. It creates respect without asking for it. It creates attention without chasing it. It creates presence without effort. This is how you move strategically, not by constantly displaying your ability, but by controlling when and how it is revealed. You don't need to correct every misconception. You don't need to respond to every doubt. You don't need to prove yourself on demand. You let time do part of the work. You let perception build naturally. And when you finally step forward, it's not to prove something. It's to establish something. Quietly, clearly, effectively. That's the advantage of being underestimated. It gives you room to prepare while others remain unprepared for you. And in any interaction, the one who is prepared always has the edge. Drop this affirmation in the comments. I move unseen. Number 7. Silent dominance and psychological presence. There's a level of control most people never reach, not because it's complicated, but because it requires restraint they don't have. They think dominance is loud. They think it's about asserting, interrupting, correcting, overpowering. But real dominance doesn't need to announce itself. It's felt before it's seen. It changes the atmosphere without effort. When someone carries silent dominance, the room adjusts around them. Conversations shift. Tones soften. Movements become more measured. Not because they demanded it, but because their presence influences the environment naturally. This doesn't come from status or appearance. It comes from internal stability. When you're not easily moved, people notice. When your emotions don't fluctuate with every external push, people feel it. When your behavior remains consistent under pressure, people register it, even if they can't explain why. That consistency builds something powerful. It builds psychological weight. Niccolò Machiavelli suggested that it is better to be respected than merely liked. And silent dominance operates exactly on that principle. It doesn't chase approval. It doesn't seek comfort. It creates an underlying tension that others respond to. You don't need to speak often. You don't need to explain yourself. You don't need to correct every misunderstanding. Your presence does the work for you. But this only happens when your actions, reactions, and expressions are aligned. If you say little, but react emotionally, the effect breaks. If you stay quiet but seek validation through subtle behavior, the consistency disappears. Silent dominance requires full control, not partial. Your face doesn't reveal unnecessary signals. Your posture remains composed. Your movements are deliberate, not rushed. Even your silence has intention behind it. It's not hesitation, it's choice. And people can feel that difference. They sense when someone is quiet because they are unsure, and when someone is quiet because they are in control. That distinction is everything. Most individuals try to create dominance through force. They raise their voice, they interrupt, they try to impose themselves on the interaction. But that approach creates resistance. It invites challenge. It turns the situation into a contest. Silent dominance avoids all of that. It doesn't compete, it positions. It doesn't force attention, it attracts it. And once attention is there, it holds it without effort. This is why stillness becomes powerful. Not physical stillness alone, but internal stillness. No unnecessary movement, no restless behavior, no impulsive reactions, just controlled presence. When someone like this enters a situation, others instinctively adjust. They become more aware of their own behavior. They second-guess what they were about to say. They measure their tone more carefully, because they can't read you easily, and what they can't read, they respect, or even fear. Over time, this creates a shift in how people treat you. You no longer need to demand anything. You don't need to prove anything. Your presence sets the tone before you even speak. And when you do speak, it carries weight, because it's not constant. It's selective. It's precise. That's the final level. Not reacting, not explaining, not performing, just being in control of yourself so completely that others feel it without needing confirmation. That's silent dominance. And once you reach that point, people who once tried to position themselves above you will no longer see you the same way. Not because you argued with them, but because you became something they couldn't influence. I want you to drop this affirmation in the comments. I command without words. At this point, you should see it clearly. The game was never about proving yourself. It was never about winning arguments, correcting people, or forcing respect. That approach keeps you trapped in reaction. It keeps you moving based on someone else's behavior. And the moment you move like that, you give away control. What you've learned here is different. You've learned to step out of that cycle completely, to stop feeding ego, to stop reacting on impulse, to observe instead of perform, to stay silent when others expect noise, to gather information while others expose themselves, to use underestimation as an advantage instead of seeing it as an insult, and most importantly, to build a presence that doesn't need validation to exist. This is not about becoming cold for no reason. This is about becoming precise, controlled, intentional. You choose when to speak. You choose when to act. You choose what deserves your energy. And that choice alone separates you from most people, because most people don't choose, they react. Now here's what will happen if you actually apply this. People who once tried to dominate you will start hesitating. They won't know how to approach you the same way. Their usual tactics will stop working. And when someone loses their ability to influence you, they lose their position over you. That's when the dynamic shifts. Quietly, without conflict, without confrontation, just a change in control. But none of this works if you only understand it. It works when you live it, when you hold your reactions, when you stay composed under pressure, when you refuse to explain yourself unnecessarily. That's where the real transformation happens. So if this shifted your perspective even slightly, don't just watch and move on. Apply it. Test it. Notice the difference. And if you're serious about building this kind of control, make sure you like this video, share it with someone who still reacts too much, and subscribe to the channel for more strategies like this.